I'm Sage, your host, and welcome to Curious Light in the Shadows, where we embrace curiosity and give it the fire it needs to thrive. This podcast is a place where no question is too big or too small, and where we dive into numerous topics with an open mind and the spirit of exploration. Join me as we journey through the shadows, illuminating the unknown with curiosity and quest for understanding. So today's topic is Christianity and the demonization of non-Christian practices. It's a topic that I hold near and dear to my heart. I love anything that is religion, spirituality. I love anything that has the word sacred on it. Not because it says sacred, but because it's anything that is sacred or a sacred practice is really just a love letter from human beings of the past, and them just showing us the epiphanies that they had, the realizations. And I think it's really, really, really cute. It's really romantic. I feel I love what religion has done for like art, for example. What spirituality has done for art, for music, for expression, and the foundations. If you hear it tussling, that's my cats. James, no. Sorry. And just what it's done for society as a whole, really focusing on the positive aspects. We're gonna we're gonna get into the negative, which we all know a little later, but it's something that I hold near and dear. It's beautiful, it's mystical, it's magical, and I feel like the foundation for a lot of like spirituality and religion is pretty much the same. It holds the same message. We're all one. It's gonna be okay. The universe loves you, and sometimes you're gonna get hurt. There are dangerous things. It's really simple yet really complicated. So the purpose of this episode is that I hope to shed light on the things that Christianity in particular tends to demonize. And the reason I'm focusing on Christianity is because it's the only religion I really have experience with. America, although it is a melting pot and ideally it's supposed to celebrate the freedom of religious practice and all of these things, I feel like anybody with eyes knows that it is predominantly Christian. I mean, they seep it into the politics, into the school system. It's kind of like enforced on Americans, this whole Christianity ideal. And because of that, it has particularly caused me harm. I've seen it cause harm to many other people, and Americans as a whole. I just want to be able to have a really honest conversation about how harmful that's been, about how it has planted generational seeds of shame and guilt. And I feel like it's kept a lot of people kind of stagnant, a lot of generations and their lineage stagnant because of that shame that's been basically planted because of Christianity. I mean, it really was like a ripple effect, like a global ripple effect, for better, for worse, but mostly for worse, in my opinion. I feel like if Christianity did what it was supposed to do, we wouldn't have homeless people. How come like churches don't get taxed? Why aren't we making more homeless shelters, or why are we not using the power that the church has? Instead of making mega churches, why don't you make like mega shelters, mega gardens? Like churches don't need zip lines. I feel they don't need giant screens. There's no reason why we have churches today that resemble the Grammys while people are going hungry. You know what I mean? But people get uncomfortable like looking at this or realizing this. And I have seen so many people suppress themselves, so many people I hold dear suppress themselves and not live the life that they are meant to live or want to live. I've also seen it suppress curiosity and their ability to look at reality for what it is, because that's how powerful religion is. Like religious trauma has a huge grip on people's lives. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll feel lighter if this is something that you struggle with. You have a better understanding um, to why religion does what it does, and I don't know, do what you will with it. But I hope that this episode empowers you to have the courage to be free and live the life that you want. You know, I feel like as long as you're not causing deliberate harm to other people, like going around stabbing people or stealing from people, you're okay, you know. So yeah, let's heal some religious trauma. I grew up Christian, a weird kind of Christian, if you will. I grew up with my mom predominantly, and she was the furthest thing from religious. Take the opposite of religious or spiritual. I mean, I've seen her have altars with her little Buddhas and stuff, which is something I realized like later on. But she wasn't like my dad, for example. Like whenever I would go over to my dad's house, we would go to church all the time. Like it was their side of the family was very religious. So that's kind of how it got brought to me. Thing is that I was a very curious child, also very perceptive, and I noticed a lot of holes, if you will, a lot of like plot holes in religion and the things that they were teaching and enforcing. And whenever I would ask questions, I'd basically be shamed for questioning God or, you know, not blindly following it. And for me, it wasn't necessarily like questioning God, but if you're going to tell me that if I don't believe in this thing, I'm going to go to hell for eternity when I die, I have a couple of questions, like that's really extreme. And it caused a lot of confusion and trauma because of that confusion. Because essentially what's going on is that these people and this religion was telling me that life is just black and white. Believe in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and you will be saved. And, like if you don't accept them, then you're going to go to hell. Essentially, if you're not Christian, you go to hell. And I'm hearing all of this black and white talk, but me as a human with a body and eyes looking out into the world, I clearly see that it's a spectrum of colors. It's not black and white at all. And that was really confusing because now I live with the fear like, oh my God, I cannot accept this religion. Like I'm trying to intellectually accept this. I'm trying to emotionally accept this as a truth so I don't burn forever, so I don't suffer. But it's just legitimately not making any sense. It's so confusing. And it felt like trying to swallow a freaking boulder with no water. Like I'm trying to bring this down and I'm trying to cement this into my life, but it is just not making sense. And it caused me to panic because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I'm gonna go to hell. Like I can't be saved. Like I'm damned. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate. And there's a lot more that, a lot more damage that religion has done, but that's basically like the seed of it was just the confusion and the suppression of curiosity. I hated that so much. And I struggled with that for a really long time. And when I grew up, we didn't have social media. I didn't have access to the internet. I didn't have a phone for a really long time. I couldn't really research on my own. The only access I had to my questions, the only access I had to information was the people around me, which of course were biased with the information that they had and or chose to accept, so terrible. It was also really difficult for me too because again, I've always been a very curious person, hence the name of the podcast. And I always wanted to learn about like Buddhism and African spirituality. I'm Dominican, so I was very much aware of things like Santeria, you know what I mean? And I was so curious and so excited to want to explore this. But then I had that fear in the back of my mind, like if you dive into this, then, the devil's going to get you. You're going to be doomed and God is going to turn his back on you, Horrible, horrible, horrible things. It was just a shitty experience overall. I suppressed myself. I suppressed my intellectual pursuits. I suppressed so many experiences and because of the fear, I was scared, very, very scared. So diving into it, I want to start off with a scripture that I feel like is the reason why Christianity is what it is today and the reason why so many Christians think the way that they do. So this scripture is John 14:6, and Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So, first of all, before we get into any of this, we have to understand, and this is a weird coincidence that I also realize, we have to understand that Jesus came to that specific place talking to those specific people that had their own specific problems in their own specific culture. Similar to how Buddha taught his community, Jesus' teachings were meant specifically for that community and that time and place. So let's look at the time where the Buddha came, right? So the Buddha was born in Lumbini, which is present day Nepal, if I'm not mistaken. And at the time, it was under Vedic rule. There were things like caste systems, which didn't allow for much room if you were born into specific castes, and sucks to suck. It had rigid hierarchy. It had, spiritual disillusionment. People couldn't connect because the way that the Vedic structure I guess, it wasn't like accessible to everybody. It was a very ritualistic nature. And people would revolt. There was a rise of ascetic movements, they were looking for alternative ways to connect to the divine. There was oppression, there was social inequality, and there was so much control over spiritual and social practices. Basically, to sum it up, people were not happy. Things were a hot mess. Everything was on fire. Now let's look at the societal climate when Jesus came about. So they were under Roman occupation. There was brutal enforcement and suppression against Roman rule. Basically, like, people were not allowed to retaliate against the Romans. Like, you guys know the story. Things are shitty. It's almost like, God is synonymous with nature, that when the ecosystem gets a little bit unbalanced, it releases something to try to stabilize that. That's what Jesus was. He was just trying to stabilize, what was going on in that time. Essentially, what was going on in Jerusalem at that time, it was like a blocked stream. So I want you to imagine that, with the Roman rule and people disagreeing and, all the oppression, it was like a giant boulder holding up that stream, holding up, human beings evolving to the next level. And Jesus simply came and moved that boulder out of the way so that that stream may flow and we can move on. Because essentially what was happening is that human beings in that culture where he was born, they were like running on a hamster wheel, essentially. It wasn't going anywhere. They were stuck. They didn't know how to spiritually evolve. Things kind of like railed off. It was just not working. It wasn't progressing. And God, being so amazing, was like, here are these people. Let me manifest and help you guys out because you have all clearly lost your minds. So now I want to get into the demonization of non-Christian practices and how that came about. Also, I want to shed some like historical context to like why that's bullshit, essentially. So I want to tell you guys about the Papal Bulls, which is a document written in 1493 by Pope Alexander VI. I can't read Roman numerals, which granted Spain and Portugal the right to colonize the Americas and convert the indigenous populations to Christianity, often by force. So that's fucked up. Okay. Like, I get that you're the Pope and everything, but again, we keep putting these people, it's another gripe I have with Christianity, which I'm not going to get into right now, but I hate how Christianity allows for regular ass human beings to be put on a pedestal. Let me tell you, we're all the same species, and terrible news, we're not that bright. Our intellect basically reflects our time. Like, the Pope literally allowed for this to happen. Like, Native Americans were put in institutions and their hair was cut. They were beaten. They were a lot of the times sexually assaulted, ripped away from their families. That's fucked up. Like, that is not, if Jesus saw that, he wouldn't be like, this is awesome. Thank you guys for doing this in my name. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. He'd tell you guys to stop. Like, that was fucked up. Okay. Moving on. I just get emotional. Again, this is very like, this is a really touchy subject for me, but I'm also obsessed. Here we go. So yeah, in the 19th century, and the early 20th centuries, Native American children were taken from their families and placed in boarding schools run by Christian organizations. These schools aimed to erase Native American culture and spirituality, replacing it with Christian teachings and Western values. And I just want to insert a little verse here. James 1:26. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. It doesn't, if you're going to sit here and be Christian, like, have your own private, connection to God. It's kind of like you're looking for confirmation bias, which is my beef with mission. Like, I don't know if they're called like missionaries or evangelists or like Jehovah Witness that go around like knocking door to door or trying to like shove their belief down somebody else's throat. Because to me, what that says is that you're looking for like confirmation bias. You need people to agree with you so that you can continue believing on your own thing, because if other people don't agree with you, then you're going to start questioning, you're going to start doubting, which is really what belief is. You can't believe something and know it at the same time. So instead of believing in Christianity, how about you know Christianity and develop your own relationship with God? Because if your faith relies on whether or not somebody else agrees with your faith or believes in your faith or is practicing your faith, then you don't really actually believe it, do you? It's a really fickle foundation, but I digress. Next, we have the slave trade. So during the slave trade, millions of Africans were forcibly taken to the Americas. European slave traders and colonizers demonized African spiritual practices to justify the enslavement and conversion of African peoples. So basically what this is saying is Africans or people in Africa already had their own spiritual practices and stuff, but obviously because the Christians were the slave owners, they use that difference as a means to be like, look, they're devil worshippers. Like, obviously we have to enslave them. They're soulless. God wants this. This is pleasing God. They use that to basically advocate, that slavery is okay. It reminds me of that. Who was that president that basically said that like slaves or people of African descent don't like feel pain or something like that, so it's okay to beat them, they don't need that much water or that much rest and stuff like that? That's the same energy this is giving. That's the same way that people essentially used Christianity to justify slavery. Is, yeah, man, like look at the spiritual. This isn't a line, this isn't in the Bible. So clearly they're demonic. Enslave them. Fucking terrible. Some bullshit. What else? Christian missionaries. Missionaries played a significant role in portraying African spiritual practices as devil worship and witchcraft. This portrayal helped to undermine African cultural identities and enforce Christianity. Again, using that difference to justify why you should brutalize an entire community of people. Again, Jesus wouldn't agree with that, but who am I? So during slavery in the United States, slave owners often used the Bible to justify the institution of slavery. They selectively interpreted and cited specific verses to support the idea that slavery was divinely ordained and morally acceptable. And I'm just going to go over some scriptures that they used to, again, justify slavery. I can't pronounce this. Ephesians 6:5, the verse says, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ." So basically, slave owners used this verse to emphasize that slaves should be obedient and submissive to their masters, comparing their service to that of serving Christ. Another verse is Colossians 3:22. "Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only when their eyes is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord." Peter 2:18. "Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourself to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but to those who are harsh." 2:9-10. "Teach slaves to be subject to their masters in everything, to try to please them, not to talk back to them, and not to steal from them, but to show that they can be fully trusted, so that in every way they will make the teaching about God, our Savior, attractive. This was mental conditioning 101, and I still see effects of this to this day when I hear people of African, descent call other people who practice African spirituality demonic. Like, really, dude? Are you really going to look me in the eye and say that your great, 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 great grandma was demonic? You're telling me that all of our ancestors, like, pre-slavery, were demonic. It also makes me sad that, because of Christianity and because of the slave trade, a lot of culture was erased. A lot of people don't know how to connect to God in, the way their ancestors did. And it's sad. And a lot of them are even scared too, because they believe that, anything that their ancestors were practicing was demonic. Is like, basically, like, you mean to tell me that every person of color was demonic before fucking slavery, before we were mentally conditioned and beaten into speaking a different language and having other beliefs? You mean to tell me that the continent that, basically started everything, that was a blueprint for everything? I'm going to go on a sidetrack here. Did you know that African Moors ruled over Europe, I think, for like 800 years and taught them to shower, okay? And how to like match clothes and, taught them about fashion and all of these things? You mean to tell me that a continent that was already well established and self-sufficient and so rich in culture and spirituality was demonic until, colonizers came and saved them? Be real. Be real. Why did they do this? Why did colonizers generally believe that they were doing the right thing? Why did slave owners believe they were doing the right thing? Why do people still to this day, when they show up at Planned Parenthood or, at like Pride or really anything that is outside of Christian, why do they feel like it's okay to spew hatred and judgment and try to outcast these people? Why do they think it's okay? It's the fanatic nature of the human being. It's religious zeal. And I'm just reading off my notes here because I cannot remember everything all the time. So here we go. Many Christians believe that converting... Oh, and this is all research that I've done, by the way. I just have them in my notes. You guys are free to look this up and do your own research. Don't just listen to me talk. I'm just bringing the information to you. But here we go. Many Christians believe that converting non-Christians was a moral imperative and divine commandment. They saw it as their duty to save souls and spread true faith. By the way, if Jesus was the Son of God, does that all mean that we're his cousins? Because that does not make any fucking sense. I'm sorry. Like, I don't think he really wanted to be put on a pedestal. I think he wanted you guys to follow him by example. Live like a Christian. Be Christian. Know Christianity. Don't just sit there and talk about Jesus all day long and then, use tithings and use church donations to buy a private jet. Just saying. You don't have to... I don't think God ever asked for you guys to go around, being performative about your religion. If you think that something is wrong, it is not your right or your moral duty, to go and try to fix that. That's not your business. Your life is a mess, probably. You probably have dishes in your sink just like everybody else. You probably have bills that are way past due just like everybody else. You are in no position to tell somebody else how to connect to God. Another why is because it's rooted in fear. I mean, there is kind of like a threat in Christianity that if you don't believe in Christianity, if you don't live, breathe, and sweat Christianity, that you're going to be damned to hell forever, which is really scary. I know from experience. That traumatized me. So if you ever experience someone of Christian faith demonizing you and telling you that you're going to go to hell, you have to understand that this is coming from a place of deep-seated fear. Really deep-seated fear. Rightfully so. I mean, if that's all you know and you genuinely believe that, like, I get it. Does that make it right to go ahead and harm other people because you're scared? No. but it's the human nature. It's kind of like in their minds, they're kind of like protecting you and um saving you from going to hell because that's all they know. It's really sad. Um and I want to get into the concept of hell for a second. I just have to get this off my chest. And this is an analogy that I use all the time to define like humanness and human mistake and sinfulness. You guys understand, right, that your mind, your personality, your likes and dislikes, and the things that you know are all things that you've accumulated mentally growing up from other people. Your soul is something that's completely separate from your mind. Your mind is a physical thing. When you die, your brain rots with your body, okay? It is a physical thing. You know, it's just a heap of impressions. You know, it doesn't okay. If a human being is a computer, right? The hardware, like the screen and the keyboard and the mouse, that would be like your body. The programming, right? The apps that it has, how it functions, whether it's Windows or like Mac, is your mind, right? And then you have what powers it, which is the energy when you plug it into, you know, the outlet. When a human being is acting in a way that's aligned with sin, let's say they're going around killing people and, you know, doing all of these really unsavory things, it's not because their hardware is messed up. I mean, it could be, but 9 times out of 10, it's their programming, right? How do you know that that person didn't suffer some really intense trauma? How do you know that that person didn't see one of their parents get shot in the face or something and it made them a sociopath? It's programming. Programming is a part of your mind which dies with your body. Your soul, you cannot have a bad soul. Why would God punish energy? Okay. Why would God, like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I feel like the concept of hell is more of like an analogy for what happens when you live in too much pride, in too much greed, and too much anger. Have you ever met, like, think about the deadly sins, right? What are the deadly sins? Um, gluttony, pride, sloth, I think like anger, lust. I'm missing two. Greed and envy. Have you ever seen someone who exhibits or like is too attached to one of these like ideologies? Have you ever seen them be like genuinely happy? Do these people look fulfilled to you? No, they're living in hell. Their lives are hell. Okay. It's not about, if Jesus said this, which I don't know if he did, but if he did, I'm pretty sure he was talking about like, hey guys, like, be cautious of being too, you know, greedy because you might isolate yourself in a corner and it's going to make you depressed. Be cautious of being too gluttonous because it's probably going to cause health issues and your life is going to be hell. Be cautious of being too angry because it might raise your blood pressure and you might die of a heart attack or something like that. Or you might not be able to have like profound connections with other people. It wasn't like, oh, you have all these traits and then when you die, your soul is going to be punished. Your soul is just energy, my love. Like, all of these impressions and all of these things that you do and all these things that you believe are just a part of your mind. Okay? Like, don't live your life in fear of like, I think that there's life after we shed our bodies. Yes. But I think it's really similar to how, have you guys seen that episode of like Rick and Morty where they play this game? What's the name? I don't know. They play like this game where they put like like a little headset on and they live this life as, you know, this other guy or whatever who lives like an ordinary life. And then when Morty takes off the headset, he's like, "Oh my gosh, where's my family? Where, you know, like I had a job, like I was a carpenter." Like it's kind of like that. That's the way I understand it, and that's the way it makes the most sense because this is a temporary experience. We're all just a bunch of characters trying to figure out and unlock, you know, the stats of this character. Your purpose in life is to figure out who you are. For me, one of the things that I had to discover is that I really love painting. You know, I also learned that I'm really adaptable in really stressful situations. I learned that I love taking bubble baths, and that's something that's really healthy for my character. You know, if I'm like depressed or going through a lot, my character really benefits from a bubble bath, but somebody else might benefit from running or doing something else. You know what I mean? Your purpose in life is to figure out and get to know yourself in all aspects of what makes you you. Unlock all these characteristics, unlock all of these traits. That is your only purpose, is to get to know yourself and hopefully do so without causing harm to others. Okay? You don't have to live your life in fear of that you're going to go to hell when you die, because that doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay? That doesn't make any sense. And honestly, like, that's not even love, because what's the point of being like, okay, I want you to tell me if this makes sense. So, I'm God, super powerful. I create life, I create humans. I allow for life to be extremely complicated and really weird. I mean, we've all seen true crime. Like, some people are born into some really fucked up situations, okay? So you're telling me the God allows for all these complex situations to happen, but then he's like, I hope they figure out what the right religion is. If they don't love me, then they're going to go to hell. I hope to figure it out. Hope they figure it out. Hope you figure it out, kid. Best of luck to you. That is sociopathic. That is psychopathic, more or less, let me say, because sociopaths are made. Psychopaths are just born that way, I believe. That is psychopathic behavior. And in my experience, God isn't really psychopathic, okay? It just doesn't make any sense. And I know that, like, new information, I learned this in ethics, by the way, in school. New information that challenges what you previously have known, people experience it as an actual physical threat. They experience it as, I'm in danger. So I get, you know, if people get defensive and find it really hard to view reality for what it is, but you guys know damn well that that doesn't make any fucking sense. It doesn't. Life is not black and white, people. Be free. Be free. Don't hurt anybody else. Encourage curiosity. Ask questions. But that's my little tangent. I don't know how I got there. What else? Oh yeah, another thing. This is way off topic, but to circle it all around, another thing I find really funny is, and I'm not going to drop names, but I recently found this out while reading the Bible. A certain somebody, which I will not name, told a close person of mine to inform me that I shouldn't dabble with crystals because, you know, that's not of God and it's demonic. But I'm pretty sure that, like, let me see if I have the verse here. I didn't quote the verse. I think it's Revelations 21:18 through 21. But it basically talks about how, like, the very, like, kingdom of God or whatever, the kingdom of heaven, is made of, like, really average crystals that we all use, like amethyst and obsidian and jasper and all of these things. Understand that, like, a lot of Christians haven't even really read the Bible. So I would take everything that they tell you with a grain of salt. Okay. It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, how are you gonna whatever. Also the demonization of using, like, sacraments, like, you know, like sage and all of these things. Listen, if you're scared of people smudging and having little trinkets around their house for, like, protection, I just want you to know that the church does the same thing. I don't know if you've ever stepped into a church, but it is full of sacraments. Okay. I believe there's a church somewhere that has, like, the skull of, like, some, like, religious figure of, like, Jesus' time and, like, somebody's finger. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. And for those of you that are like, oh, witchcraft is of the devil. Last time I checked, people in church pretend to eat the flesh of Jesus and drink the blood of Christ. Okay? You guys are pretending to eat flesh and drink blood. Don't talk to me about witchcraft. I don't want to hear it. Like, the hypocrisy. Total hypocrisy. Yeah. I have no words. I need a wine break. Give me a second. Which brings me into my next topic. practicing spiritual practices while maintaining good spiritual hygiene. I know what you guys are thinking, but Sage, I've seen so many testimonies on YouTube about like ex tarot users and ex meditators and ex Satanists who like saw the light in Christianity because they saw some crazy shit. That's gonna happen when you're not grounded. Newsflash, it happens in Christianities. You know how many priests? I don't know really what the difference between like a priest and a pastor is. No, I do. Priests are the ones with the little like collar, right? And then pastors are just like regular regular people, I guess. Um fuck, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, they molest children, okay? They take, your donations and buy little private jets and buy mansions instead of feeding, you know, the homeless. Not to mention when, you're really dogmatic about a religion, it breaks families. How many freaking people from the LGBTQ community ended up homeless or killed themselves because of Christian ideologies, because their parents wouldn't accept them and be loving and forgiving like Jesus, and, destroyed their entire families? You're willing to, it's possible to spiral into madness no matter what you do. If you don't have your feet planted firmly on the ground, because you got to think, when you deal with like religion or spirituality, you're going like up here. That's why it's like associated with like the sky, like the clouds and the skies. You're going up here. But my love, you're human. Your job is also to be a person and take care of like mundane human things like family, relationships, all of that good stuff. When people become too dogmatic, they're literally they destroy everything around them. Okay, like you lose sight of what's real. I cannot imagine someone claiming to be Christian and follow somebody who preached love and compassion and look at their child in the eye because they told them that they were gay and kick them out or damn them to hell. Are you serious? You're telling me that that's aligned with Christianity? That doesn't make any fucking sense. I'm sorry. But that's dumb. That's just, you're just a bitch. I'm sorry. I know that's not right, but you're just a shitty person and you're hiding your shittiness and trying to use Christianity as a means to justify your shittiness. And it's also, again, due to fear a lot of the time. And that's what happens when you're not grounded. I want to share a personal story with how this also affected me. Not with Christianity, but when I first got into tarot, and I tell everybody the story, I went fucking insane. Why? Because I was doing it from a place of desperation. My feet were not planted firmly on the ground. I was not meditating. I was not doing any type of balance whatsoever. And I felt the compulsive need to consult my tarot cards, for everything. I made a video about this on one of the TikToks. I saw like a testimony of this chick saying the same thing. And my response to that was like, sweetie, the call is coming from inside of the house. And I get it because it happened to me too. I get it. But even at that time, like I knew it was me. Like I was coming from a place of desperation. I was in a really bad point in my life and I was in the middle of the unknown. I didn't know what was going to happen. Couldn't get a job, was running out of my savings. Like I was scared for my life. And I'm like, I need to consult the tarot cards. Every single day I was consulting tarot cards. I'd be up at 3:00 in the morning asking my tarot cards questions because it was coming from a place of desperation. Okay. And that desperation comes from us, not the tarot cards, not the yoga, not the religion. You need to make sure that you do things with good intention as well, or else it's going to bite you in the ass. If I had to give another analogy or metaphor, anything you do, you're doing to yourself. Reality and everything you see, everything you see is a mirror to you. So if you have negative intentions towards somebody, if you're praying for somebody's downfall, if you're doing witchcraft to like harm somebody when they definitely don't deserve it, that's going to bite you in the ass because you're doing it to yourself, is what I've learned. Like, fuck around, find out if you want to. Oh yeah, another way that like religion like being too religious can be harmful is, again, the fear of like questioning anything. How many stories have we not heard where kids come forward and be like, hey, pastor so and so fucking touched me, and nobody wants to, or I saw pastor so and so cheating on his wife. Everybody wants to turn a blind eye. That's what happens when you don't plant your feet firmly on the ground. That's what happens when you don't have good spiritual hygiene. You don't even dare to question what's in front of you because you're putting this in such a high pedestal that you lose sight of what's fucking real, and you go crazy. You literally go crazy. It's horrible. Want to share, and this is a realization I had. If this works for you, use it. If it doesn't, move on. But spirituality is meant to help guide us in our human experience. Think about being human as like being in school, right? You have your teacher there to clarify the curriculum if you don't fully understand it. You have the teacher there to help bring you back when you get a little bit too confused. Oh, I understand. Oh, I remember. I forgot like this formula, or I forgot what this word meant, or I forgot, the definition of this. But they're not going to sit there and do the test for you. They're not supposed to. They're not going to sit there and take the curriculum for you. It's not how it works. You are responsible for your own growth. Okay? Religion and spirituality is an assistance, not a crutch, not an obsession. Do with that information what you will. When it comes to the demonization of non-Christian spiritual practices, I want to circle back to how human beings are not that bright. And you're going to hear me say that probably throughout this entire podcast, because it is the greatest realization I've ever had. Human beings, myself included, we're not that bright. It's demonizing other spiritual practices outside of Christianity. It's kind of like a blanket, like safety net, if you will. Because again, everybody's really different. I can sit here and know that I'm going to want to research something before I do it. I want to fully understand something before I meddle with it. Other people are not that way. Okay? Other people are not that way. Other people don't have discernment. Other people can't really process things correctly, or don't know what questions to ask, or don't know how to consider other things. And they might end up having a negative experience because they don't know what they're doing. And if you're Christian and, things like yoga or meditation or crystals or what have you scares you, it's fine. Like if it's something that you're genuinely not interested in, leave it alone. You don't have to do it. It's fine. If it works for you, it works for you. But if you're a Christian and you're curious about like other spiritual practices, if you're curious about like tarot and stuff like that, just learn about it. And like I said, good spiritual hygiene, very important. Don't lose sight of reality. Because a lot of the demons that people talk about is their own fucking psychosis. That's the devil, is your own psychosis. There is no entity here. I mean, given maybe that's something that I'm still like naive about, but I've dabbled like with tarot cards specifically for a really, really long time. And my tarot cards have never led me to like do something stupid, or it's never like whispered in my ear like, yes, sell your soul to the devil. Like that's never happened. Like I'll give you an example of like what I use tarot cards for. I was curious on whether or not I should start in the in the fall semester or in the spring semester. It told me, hey, you should probably start in the fall semester. I listened and I came across the best classmates I ever had. Like they are like, they're the best. Like I don't know if you guys have ever been in a classroom where you get along with everybody, but I got along with everybody. I've met the most wonderful woman in my life, has helped heal my connection to the feminine because I have mommy issues, surprise, surprise. And it was just like tarot cards have never led me astray. Okay? Like it's your own intention. If you have shitty intentions and you're out here trying to do fuck shit, then fuck shit you will find. Okay? If you are not grounded, then you're going to go crazy. That's pretty much it. But don't be scared. Ask questions. Do research and try it for yourself, man. Like that's all you have to worry about is yourself. Like I don't really know how else to put it. I don't want to talk in circles, and I hope you guys get it. Um, yeah. And if it doesn't work for you, if it's something that you're scared of, there's no reason for you to like demonize other people. I get that it's scary and stuff, and you're scared, like, oh, like if you're gonna smudge, like get away from me. Like, if that's the kind of person you want to be, then fine, remove yourself. I can't tell you how to go about your life, but to sit here and try to like plant seeds of shame into somebody's head, I suggest that you take a really long look at yourself and sit down and read your Bible, because Jesus preaches against that. Like, it's not your place. If anybody is going to judge anybody, let God do it, because you don't know what you're talking about. You are a meek human being just like everybody else. Nobody has it figured out. Nobody knows what's going on. We are all lost in the sauce, just improvising. Okay? And if you feel like you know the best and you need to sit here and like, shame somebody for practicing, different than you, then you're just arrogant. Hate to break it to you. A good rule of thumb for any spiritual practice or any belief that you choose to dive into is if it's helping me achieve the life that I want, if it's giving me a full heart, a clear mind, and healthy relationships, then it is beneficial. But if it's causing isolation, if you catch yourself passing judgment, if you find yourself stressed out, if you find yourself suppressing, then it is not for you, okay? If Christianity brings about a clear mind and a full heart for you and healthy relationships, and wonderful, congratulations. You have found your path that helps assist you in your human experience, and that's great. But if it doesn't, try something else. Try something else, or don't try anything at all. You don't need it if you don't need it. Some people don't need that kind of assistance. Some people are really good at being human. I am not one of those people. I needed spirituality to help remind me of like, things are important. Like, how we don't have control over everything, and but we do have control over ourselves, and to lead with love, and to just be yourself, whatever. And I want to end this episode with a verse. Matthew 22:39. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's really all you need. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you love yourself, you can only give what you have, right? So you can't give somebody $20 if you don't have $20. If you are full of hatred and you hate yourself, that's probably what you're going to give other people. If you're sitting there criticizing yourself and being, like shaming yourself, then you're going to shame other people and criticize other people. But if you love yourself and you accept yourself and you celebrate yourself, then naturally you're going to celebrate your neighbor, which is aligned with the Christian beliefs, just saying. This concludes today's episode. Thank you guys for listening and hearing me ramble and vent and get overly passionate. I hope I've shed some light on some questions you might have had. If there are any other taboo subjects that you guys want me to dissect, let me know. I love you so much. And yeah, that's it.